Welcome back, everybody, for another video. This video, we're going to be covering Swarf. So, this is part of our multi-axis series for the mill. This should be the second lesson. And you might notice my camera isn't on. Well, yeah, I had some issues with that. Messed around with it for about an hour yesterday. I cannot get it working. So, until IT gets me fixed up, we're going to be cameraless. So some people may like that better anyway. You don't have to look at my ugly mug. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So if you pull this file in, what you're going to see is you're going to see a file. Basically, it's going to come in like this. Essentially what we want to do, and I do already have my fixture in here. I did bring that in already. From lesson 1, you should know how to bring that in. So I didn't want to make that part of this lesson. And if you don't, go back to lesson 1 and check that out. So this part is not exactly where we want it. We probably want 0 to be at the top of our stock. So we're going to bring this part about 20 thousandths below 0 so we can mill a little stock off the top of this ledge up here. And we're also going to tilt it, or we're going to rotate it a little bit to get the best bang for our buck out of the material here, because the way the material would be, it'd be a wider piece of material. So we're going to rotate this, and I'm going to show you how to do that, how to position this and get it out of the smallest piece of material possible. Okay, so to start off, I'm going to select this, and I'm going to pick dynamic here. I'm going to start off by rotating this thing, and what I'm going to do is make sure I get this lower right-hand corner here, and I'm going to click that. Okay, now I'm going to go to top. And I want to align this X with this point here so that I can basically align them with my X-axis. So what I'm going to do is I need to click this little button here. Now what that does is it switches it over to align my gnomon here. So I'm going to go ahead and pick this. And that's not the one I wanted. I wanted this one. Okay, and I'm going to make sure I got that lower corner there. And I'm going to go back to top. Okay, so now my gnomon is perfectly aligned with that. Now I'm going to switch this back. Now I'm back on rotate mode. And right there, so that was about 12.23 degrees. Now I have this thing aligned with my X-axis, as you can see here. So I'm going to go ahead and click, and I'm going to hit check. So now, instead of having, like a 10-inch wide part, my stock is actually a little bit narrower here. I can get this out of a narrower piece of stock. Okay. Now, the problem with that is I rotated it around this point, so it's not centered anymore. So I'm going to go ahead and pick a dynamic again. I'm going to grab the center of the part, and I'm going to move that to 0, 0. I'm going to hit check, and then you can see this kind of is in the middle there. I want to bring this down to 0. So I'm going to show you 2 ways you can do this. So a lot of times you'll see me do this just out of habit. I'll go and I'll basically click on 0, and if I go to front here, well, that's not really where I want. There we go. Front, now we're aligned with 0. And a lot of times what you'll see me do is hit check, and then grab it again, and just come down negative 0.02, enter, and then I'm 20 thou below. An easier way to do that is that's just a habit for me. It's the way I kind of learned how to do it in the originally. But I would encourage you to probably get in a better habit. And what you can do is you can actually click this. And hold on a second here. Dynamic. And, okay. And by the way, if you want to know why my gnomon's off, it's because I'm in a different plane. So I'm in the front plane for my C&T. If I hit equals and go into the top plane, now if I select this dynamic Now you see the Z's in the right way. So it doesn't really matter for this, but if you were wondering why this was different from my actual WCS, that's why. Okay, so right here, if I highlight here and I hit tab, now I'm inside this box. So right now, that's how far it was above. And I could just hit minus 0.02 and it'll put that automatically 20 thousandths under. So it just, if I go to front there, you can see it's about 20 thousandths below, or it is 20 thousandths below. So it's just a way that I can actually set that accurately without making two steps. It's just one step out of it. So anyway, it's just something I wanted to show you. Okay, so all right, let's move on here. So we got our part positioned where we want it. We do eventually need to set this. Obviously, I'm going to set my stock first before I do that. So, by the way, I'm in mill default here. We are going to switch this over. We're going to switch this over to a UMC 500. You may or may not have access to this post. So if you don't, that's fine. You can just do everything in default and everything will be fine. The reason I'm using the UMC 500 is because I want to do a machine sim when we're all done here. That way you can see kind of how this thing looks. All right, so got my rectangular stock. I'm going to right click, edit the bounding box for that. I'm going to select my part. Maybe. There we go. Now I'm going to select my part. Okay, there's my new bounding box. Now, this is going to make it exactly the size of the part. I want a little bit more all around this thing. So I'm going to look at what the size is. You can see here, this is pretty close to 7.5, so I'm just going to make it 7.5. I'm going to make it kind of a nominal length. I can make it 7.625, whatever you feel comfortable with. This is the length, so you'd probably cut this a little bit longer. That being said, I'm just going to leave it at 7.5. This is 2.78. We'd be using 3-inch stock without a doubt there. And then we have 0.625 is the thickness. We're going to need to hold on to a little bit. I'm actually going to cut this out of 1-inch stock. And I'm going to hit check. Okay. Now that looks pretty darn good there. The only thing I have is, you can see this is at the top. We're just going to make that at 0, so our stock's at 0. And we're going to go to toolpath and turn our stock on, and I'm going to go to front. And that should be lined up with 0, so we have a little bit to take off the top there. Now, one thing I want to mention is that this is a pretty tricky part to machine complete. Once you do op 1 here, the way that we're going to do it, it would be very difficult to hold on to get this thing, to get this extra material off the back side here. So if I were making, you know, maybe like 10, 20, maybe even up to 100 of these, I probably would do this differently. I'd probably actually tab this, maybe hold it on the end, hold a wider piece of stock, and tab this thing out from this side. I'm just kind of spitballing here. That's probably how I would do it. Now, if I was making, you know, a couple hundred, 1,000, or even more, then I probably would do it this way, and I would probably find a way to fixture this, and then mill this to thickness. Just because I don't want to deal with those tabs for hundreds of parts, and this might just provide a nicer product, and you're going to have a nicer chamfer. Everything would be chamfered, come off the part finished. However, for this video, all we want to do is learn how to do our swarf. So for this video, what we're going to do is we're just going to do it like this. So we're going to do it as if we were making a couple thousand of these things, and we're just going to do this operation from the top here. Okay? All right, so I'm going to go to the right side. I'm going to set my levels, planes equals right. Okay. So I'm going to grab my vise. We're going to move this up, which, by the way, we probably won't be doing this kind of stuff, creating stock or anything like that in future videos, since we've done this in the first 2 now. I'm going to hit check. And this does take a second because this is quite a big file. Go back to right side. And we're gonna hit end selection. We're gonna move this in, and I'm gonna assume that I actually have this dovetailed, and I'm gonna dovetail this in just so I have clearance for my jaws here. So I'm just gonna kind of look at a nominal size. I'm gonna come negative 1.5, negative 1.5, and that's where my jaws would be. And I'm gonna hit check, grab this one and this one. And this part here doesn't matter. I'm just really anal and like it to look correct. Obviously, you're not going to run into that. You're only going to run into the jaws. But why not select it anyway? Okay, so there we go. So we're set up. That is all we really need our fixture for at the moment. Okay, so now that we got that set up, what we're going to do is we're going to have to mill this out. One of the things that I'm looking at here is also process. One of the things you want to take away from some of these are process. And I already kind of mentioned that this might not be the way I do it if I was only making a few of these. But if I'm making a bunch of these, I'm probably going to do it this way. And how am I going to process this part this way? So, meaning order of operations here. So, number one thing, do I want to face the whole top? No, I don't. That wouldn't make any sense whatsoever at all. All I need to face is this part here. So I'm going to wait till I mill most of this away. I'm going to do that last. And I'm just going to do a contour on one of these edges. And we're just basically going to take a path along this with a 3/8 end mill and just face that. There's no reason to face this whole thing. You're getting rid of it anyway, so it doesn't matter. So things you want to think about is efficiency, right? Okay, so do I want to mill this side away? And basically, do I want to mill basically all this material away and then do these swarfs here? Because basically, what this is a swarf. We're going to have to swarf this. Either that or 3D mill it. Well, swarf's going to be a heck of a lot quicker, I can guarantee you that. We're going to need to swarf this with a ball mill because we have a radius down there. So do I want to mill the material away? No, I really don't. Now, that would be dependent upon a couple things. Now, I happen to already know that if I analyze this entity, you can see this thing is only 88 thousandths thick. If I mill all this away and I swarf this side, or if I swarf this side, and then I go to swarf this side, or one or the other, or both, it's going to probably chatter on me pretty good. So we've got to take that into account. Now, one of these is going to be done first, and the second one's going to be done. So there is going to be an 88 thousandths wall, but I know that my ball mill is probably going to create more cut pressure because I have probably more engagement here. So that's probably the one I'm going to do first. Now, hey, I could be wrong, right? I could go and machine this part and just have a nightmare of a time. I might flip it around and machine this side first and then do this because it's connected to here. Some people might make that argument. Sometimes you're not always correct in the way that you're going to process something, and all you can do is use your best judgment from experience, but you want to think about those sort of things. It's important that you think about it, and then you can try different stuff if it fails. The process that you choose first fails. Anyway, what we're going to do is, what I've decided to do is I'm going to do this side second. So I'm going to leave all this material connected to here so that acts as a damper, or basically keeps it rigid when I mill the other side here. So that means I need to remove all this material. Okay, so what I'm going to do, and I'm going to include the dynamic mill in this. And this part may look familiar, by the way. This is actually a part that I believe MasterCAM did an example with. It's called the Swarf bracket, and I think they did a video on it. Now, when they do the video, they usually don't show you how to rough the material away and all that stuff. So I want this video to be complete, and I want to show you how to do the roughing and completely get this thing prepared for a swarf. So, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a boundary around this thing, because I know already. In fact, actually, let's just do a toolpath here. Let's create dynamic. We're going to go from outside and, oops, sorry, not dynamic. Silly me. OptiRough. And I'm going to leave on the walls 0.02. I'm going to leave on the floors 0.02. And I'm going to go ahead and select my whole part. Triple click. Oops. Triple click. There we go. Finally got it. So we got the whole part. 20 thou around. Toolpath control. Boundary change. We're going to leave this blank for now. We're going to come from outside. We'll leave center on. We're going to come back to this. We're definitely going to come back to this because it's not going to do what we want it to do. But I want to demonstrate, what it's actually going to do. So I'm going to delete these end mills out of here. Yes, yes. And we're going to come into our aluminum tools. We're going to assume this thing is aluminum. Grab our 3/8 end mill. And we're good. I am not going to set any speeds and feeds in here. We did that in the first video. I told you what RCTF means. So we're going to just kind of forego speeds and feeds for the sake of time because you already know what that means, or you should already know what that means. Holder. We do need to select our holder. Now, in the first video, you may have noticed I had a lot of BTs in here. I no longer have those. Basically, I just have these C's and then the H's. I don't care about those. But I'm going to show you something here once I select this. So we're going to use a CAT 40 ER16. Tool projections about 1.2. That looks pretty good. I don't know why I picked a ball mill. That is not what we want. So let's go ahead and go back in there and change that. Apparently I have my filter. Check. Okay. 3/8 flat. There we go. Now we're going to go grab our holder. ER16. Right there it is. 1.2. All right. That looks pretty good there. Now, my cut length on this probably isn't adequate. So I'm going to edit this tool real quick. And we're just going to make that 1.0. All right. And I'm going to hit finish. All right. So now we have an adequate cut length there. And I know that's what my end mills that I have here in the shop are. Step over, let's call that 20%. Step down, let's make that 1 inch. Step up, let's make that 0.1. And we should be good there. Steep shallow, we'll leave that blank for now. I'm going to make my, 0.25. Make my clearance retract 0.25. No need to have it going crazy high. Back feed rate, we'll make that 500. That's something that's good to set in your default. I don't have it set on this computer, unfortunately. And we're going to leave everything else the way it is. Make sure we're in the right plane. We are. Coolant would obviously be on. I'm not really worried about that. One thing that we would need to do is we need to make sure that we are changing our work offsets or setting our work offsets. Okay, so let's see what we got here. All right, so it's milling all this material well, which that looks great if we want to get rid of everything, but we do not want to get rid of everything. We want to leave this material over here intact. So what we're going to do is we need to create a containment. And to create that containment, I'm actually going to we're going to actually just kind of draw it in here. So I'm going to go to wireframe, lines, go to multi-line. And I'm going to, actually going to turn, I'm going to do this. Start up here. Not where I wanted. Start up here. Okay, that's a little better. And we're just going to go a little bit past the stock. Oh, hold on. I'm on the wrong level. So I'm on my fixture level. We delete that. Turn my fixture level off. Contain. All right, let's work on this level. Okay, go a little bit past the stock, come out around, a little bit past the stock, a little bit past the stock. And you're probably wondering why these lines are going all over. It's just so I didn't snap to anything. And the other thing that I'm going to use for this is I'm going to project this bottom edge right here. And that's going to give me my containment. So I guess I could project the top edge too, technically. But let's do the bottom edge. Actually, yeah, let's do the top edge. So I'm going to go to Transform, Project, and I'm going to project these lines and hit End Selection. Okay, so basically I just created geometry at the 0 level, or at 0 WCS. All right, now I'm going to go and trim these, wireframe, divide, get rid of that, get rid of that, get rid of that, get rid of that. So I just took them overlaps out, and there we go. All right, so we're going to try that, see what happens here. So now it's going to be our containment, or our boundary, I should say. I call it a contain, but technically that's what it's doing. So boundary chain, got to go into our wireframe, select that boundary chain. All right, we still want to come from outside because we don't want to do a helix in there. If you pick inside, stay inside. It's going to keep the whole tool inside, and it's going to helix down to depth. Now, is that okay? Yeah, it's okay, but not necessarily ideal. Okay, so we're going to come from outside. This is how it compensates. So it's the center of, basically it's saying the center of the tool cannot go outside this boundary. It has to stay basically right on the boundary. So we're going to go ahead and hit check, see what we get here. And I just turned off. All right. It's not too bad. That looks like that's what we want. But let's run this and see what happens. You're going to see it's not really ideal here. Let me turn off my axes and my wireframe and my gnomon and hit play. All right, so you can see we're fast feed rating through this. We definitely don't want to do that. That will lead to a broken tool for sure. That being said, on this side, everything looks pretty good. That side, we basically did exactly what we wanted. But we have a problem here. We need to tell the tool not to come in this area here. So to do that, and there may be better ways to do this. This is the way that I know and I am very familiar with, is we're going to create a solid here. And I'm going to call it an avoid solid. Okay, and I'm going to grab this. I'm going to grab all of these. And I'm going to right click. I'm going to move them to avoid solid, but I'm going to copy them and hit check. Okay, now I'm going to turn my contain off, and I'm going to leave my avoid solid on. We're going to take a line, and we're going to connect these. And I'm going to hit check. And we're actually going to go to our solids menu, and we're going to extrude this. Check. And that's fine. I don't care how deep it goes. I just want to avoid it. And you may notice that it actually goes through into there. That's all right. We can't get that anyway because it can only go this far anyhow. So that's not going to hurt anything. So that'll be just fine. So I'm going to hit check. Okay, toolpaths. I'm going to go back into this toolpath. And I'm going to go to my model geometry, and I'm going to create an avoidance here. Triple click that, hit check, and hit check. And while that's regenerating, I'm going to turn this avoid solid off because we don't really need to see that. And let's see what we've got now. Now we are respecting that boundary. So let's take a look. Okay, that's pretty good. Now, one thing we want to watch out for, we don't want to go 1 inch deep. So we don't want to cut away all that material. And that's because our vise is holding on to that, obviously. So we don't want that thing going all the way to the bottom. So what we're going to do is we're going to come in, going to go to our steep shallow. And I think this part was about 625, I remember, when we were setting our stock. So let's just take it to negative 0.7. That's going to get us definitely far enough. We're going to update that. And let's see what we get here. Okay, now we're not going all the way down. And you may also notice it's basically, if we go front here, we're basically making cuts at 0. So that's kind of stupid too. We don't really want to do that either. So we're going to select the minimum depth of right there and hit regen. Now you notice it got rid of those air passes. Basically, we're just rubbing the top of the stock. And we're going to go ahead and hit check. And that looks pretty darn good. So what I've really kind of tried to show you how to do here, and we could have done this a couple of different ways. We could have said, hey, stay inside. It probably wouldn't have violated this, but it would have helixed down. It wouldn't have been as efficient. If I'm making a bunch of these, I want it to be as efficient as possible. Time is money. If I save 20 seconds per op, 10 seconds per op, that's going to add up. So you want to make this as efficient as possible. All right, so that looks pretty darn good. Let's just, since this is so important, let's just double check it. So roughing that away. Next steps up, roughs that away. And that's it. So that's great. That looks really pretty efficient. Now there's other things that we could really fine tune here, but I'm happy with that for this example. All right, so let's turn that off. Now we've roughed everything away here. Now we do have the option. We could say, okay, well, I'm ready to finish this outside. I'm going to finish this floor, and we should probably do that. So let's go ahead and hit Alt-T, and let's go to our tool paths here. Okay, so let's take a contour, and I'm going to finish this side here. I'm going to turn this off. I'm going to use this partial loop right here. I'm going to grab that, and I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to grab that. Oh, that didn't work. There we go. So now we have that loop. That can be a pain in the butt, this partial. If you're really struggling with that, you can just do the edges and just work your way around. We're going to do that here in a second, so I'll show you how to do that as well. So I'm going to go ahead and hit check. And we're going to go ahead and pick our tool. So 3/8. Again, I'm not setting these speeds and feeds. The tool holder's already selected. Cut primers. Oh, I wanted to show you something with the tool holder. I wanted to show you why there's no B's in there anymore like there was in the first video. I'll get to that as soon as I finish this tool path. Okay, I want to do a 2D. Want to do wear, external corner breaks. That's fine. Lead in, lead out. We're going to leave that as is. We are going to adjust our contour and extend it 10%, just so we aren't starting right on the corner. Multi-passes, we are going to take a multi-pass. I'm going to do 0 rough, 2 finish, 0.01 apart, and then a spring pass. Okay, depth. Now it's going to 0. I'm going to go negative 0.01 just to go a little deeper. Top of stock, we're going to make that absolute 0. We're going to make this one absolute 0.1, absolute 0.25. Filter's good. Planes, yeah, everything here should be good. Cooling should be on. I'm just not going to deal with that at the moment. Okay, so that looks pretty darn good. So that should finish the outside for us there. Now, I said I was going to show you why we didn't have there's extra tool holders. If you go to Tool Manager, you can actually go into your holders here. You can see where you're pulling them from. And you can actually go in here and delete them out. So like I have some H's that I'm never going to use here at the bottom. Now I didn't delete them out because I'm going to go down to the bottom, so I don't really care. I only wanted to get rid of the ones that were in the way. But if I hold Shift, select all those, and just hit delete, yes, it's going to get rid of all those. Now all I have are Cat 40s, Cat 50s, and Cat 60s. And I really probably could get rid of the Cat 50s as well. So if I select all those, yes. Because I only have a Cat 40. So now I only have Cat 40 holders in here. I also know that this one's goofy. I'm going to delete that one, yes. Edit holder. I can actually go in, edit this. I can change the name of it. So if you don't like this system where it's saying C4, C3, you can call it Cat 40 GL gauge length 3.5 ER25 if you want. That makes more sense to you. And you can also just basically get rid of anything you don't have. You could only have you could set this up so it only has the ones that you have. That way you can't accidentally select something that you don't have. So anyway, that's how you can kind of pare down your holders from your selection. I want to save that, of course. I don't want those other ones in there. All right. So anyway, back to this. What we're going to do is we're going to take a 2-inch face mill and we're going to finish that bottom. We're also going to finish this top here while we're here as well. And I'm going to show you how to do that first. Since we have this 3/8 tool in there, we're going to do that right now. So I'm going to pick contour. In fact, actually, no. I'm going to select contour, copy it after. And I'm going to go in and select my chain. So I'm going to rechain all. Okay. And I'm going to pick this method now. And I'm going to pick this inside edge. Now, there's a couple of ways you can walk this around. You can keep pressing this arrow, which is kind of annoying. You could also use your X key. Your X key will advance it forward the direction that the red arrow is going. Now, if I wanted to come this way, I would have to change these arrows around. The J key will do that. That will alternate the arrows. These are also the controls. You can also click these as well over here, and then this one changes the arrows. This one goes back, and I believe K, or is it I? L? Nope. I forget which one goes backwards because I hardly ever use the backwards one. Let's see if we can figure it out here. O is back. So the O key is back. And then X is forward. So I'm just going to X over here. I'm going to E for end, hit check, and check. Okay. So I have that selected. I'm going to go into my parameters. I could have created a new, I just wanted to copy it just to show you can do that. Not worried about the speeds and feeds. Lead in, lead out. We are not going to use a lead in and lead out. We are going to extend the contour 80%. Multipass, we do not need that. Under cut parameters, we are going to be staying along this edge. So that's not ideal. We actually want to overlap that edge. So I'm going to say stock to leave on walls here, negative 50 thousandths. That way it's going to overlap that edge by 50 thousandths. Okay. Linking parameters, depth, incremental, negative 10. I am going to select a pointer. It should be incremental 0. And then top of stock should be absolute 0. That would be correct. And then all these would be correct as well. I'm going to go ahead and hit check. And there's my path. If we take a look at that path in backplot, you can see here that material's moved or milled away where it's coming down. And you can see right there it's overlapping that edge by 50 thousandths. So that looks good. All right. So let's take a look at that quick and hit play. There we go. We've milled the top of that. We finished this bottom surface here. That's all finished in 2 size. Obviously, it's not all the way to depth, the same depth. We could bring that down if we wanted to. If we want to say, hey, we want that to be a little deeper. I think we want the negative 0.7. We actually could just make this absolute and call it negative 0.7 and hit check. And now that would be at the same place the roughing is. Okay. So just some things I, made a mistake there, and I saw it now in my... That's something I want to stress. That's why we use this verify. Something that I see, I want to look for stuff like that, be very attentive to the verify, it's what it's for, and then make those small adjustments. Now, would that have mattered? Probably not, but, So there, now it looks good. So now we got everything pretty consistent there. All right, so we're going to go ahead and hit check. Now, we are going to go ahead and do our first swarf here. And then that's going to be the last thing we do in this video. We'll pick up in the next video and finish this other side. All right, so I'm going to minimize these, put my little arrow down here. I'm also going to turn all of these off. Okay, there we go. Sometimes that thing's a pain in the butt. All right, so we're going to pick the swarf mill. All right, we are not going to be using this flathead mill. We actually need a ball mill for this. And just so you know, how do I know what ball mill we need? Okay, well, let's take a look here. So the easiest way to figure this out sometimes is to analyze an entity. Okay, well, we have a 3D of 0.38, but this is a spline edge, so that's really not something I want to evaluate there. So let me see if I have this. This looks like a straight section here, or kind of looks like a straight section. So let's see if I can evaluate one of these and see if I can get maybe just like a curve. Yeah, not there. Analyze entity, not there. Okay. So you can see I'm not really getting what I want out of this analyze entity. See, what I really need to use here, I need to use dynamic. And I'm going to select this surface. And if I look at this surface here, you can see I got about diameter of, if I look at this diameter here, you can see I got about 380, 379 as I kind of stay in the same place. Now, it will change a little bit as you kind of go this way as well, back and forth. But if I stay in line here, basically I'm about 380 radius. Now, for the sake of this video, I'm going to say a 3/8 end mill is going to be fine. It's going to keep us within our tolerance. We're going to say there's a plus or minus 10 thousandths tolerance on this radius. If it was tighter than that, you may have to get a specialty ground tool. Or we'd have to 3D mill it, or, there's obviously some other options we can do there. But if we're making thousands of these, I'm getting a 380 end mill for sure. Okay, so anyway, let's continue. Let's go back into this swarf. And we're going to pick our 3/8 ball mill. Check. Okay, again, I don't care about these. All right, let's get a holder. This is 3/8, so I'm definitely going to use this ER16. It's going to be sticking out 1.25. That looks fine. We're going to go ahead and assume that that's enough. Yeah, well, we'll change it. Why not? While we're in here. Cut length's always going to be 1 inch on this. Okay, finish. Holder, that looks good. All right. So our cut pattern. So first thing we need is we need to select our swarf geometries. Well, that's going to be the surfaces that we're cutting. Generally, when I'm selecting Swarf geometries and there is a radius, I'm using a ball mill to cut a radius at the bottom, I usually omit the radius surfaces. I will only grab the flat surfaces. Now, this will work with the radius surfaces sometimes, but I don't want to give it more information than I need to because I don't want it to confuse it or to do weird stuff. So I'm only going to give it those surfaces because really it only needs to follow. It only needs to be basically against those surfaces. This is going to be formed by the tool. Just the shape of the tool is going to form this. So I'm just going to select those and hit end. Floor geometry. So this thing needs to know how deep to go. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that on. And I'm going to tell it, that's my floor. That's where I want you to stop. Okay. And tilt lines, we'll talk about that later. Guide curves. We need guide curves here. Well, we don't need them. I shouldn't say that. In fact, actually, we'll leave them out for this just to see what happens. Tool axis control, that's going to be 5 axis, that's fine. Guide curves only. Linking, everything here is good. So we're going to go ahead and hit check. We're going to see if we can get a path first. Before we go crazy and setting a whole bunch of stuff, let's see if we get a path. Okay, well, we got a path. That does not look ideal. So let's go back in. And, I kind of assumed that was what it was kind of going to look like. We need some guide curves here. What these guide curves are going to do is they are essentially going to guide the tool. You can see here these rails, this upper rail and this lower rail, it's going to keep contact with them and it's going to use those to create this surface. Now another thing, and we're going to talk about this later in another video, we can only cut ruled surfaces. And what I mean by ruled surfaces is basically it's a straight line that is oriented. So you could take this surface and it's a straight line, straight line, straight line, straight line that connects. You could connect these two lines with a straight line. It's not curved in between these two. So it has to be a ruled surface. And we'll talk about that in more detail later. Okay. So let's create some guide curves here. So first thing is I can create a guide curve using this top. So let's go ahead and see if we can get that to work. So let's go into guide curves, upper rail, and we're going to go ahead and hit X, 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 X. Uh-oh. It's not going anywhere. That means we have a gap. So as you can see, this solid is a little goofy. It's not quite, it's just not a good solid. So there's a couple of ways we can deal with this. And the reason I'm going through all this stuff is because this is the kind of stuff you run into all the time that are not in the normal videos. The ones that other people post, they don't talk about this kind of stuff. And this is the biggest part, right? Is running into these geometrical issues. So we're going to do this two different ways. I'm going to do the bottom one a little bit different. I'm going to do this one different. So we're going to do two different ways. I'm going to basically create a curve on edge. Actually, hold on. What level am I working on? Yep, I'm working on a void. So anytime you create something or you think you create something that doesn't show up, you're on the wrong level. All right, so let's create, and we're going to call these guide. We'll call it 1 because we're going to create another one on the other side. All right, so I'm going to work on here, and I'm going to create curve on edge. Cool, cool, cool. Just click these. Yeah. Kind of work our way down along here. Okay, there's our guide curve. Now, if we go in there, we try to chain that, and I can actually, you don't even need to go into the toolpath. You can just pick chain up here, and we can see if we can chain that. You can see here, we still have that gap. So we need to fix that gap. I can actually click on this, right-click, and say Analyze Entity. I could take that little node point and I'm going to connect it and hit check. I've now moved that curve to there. Okay, now let's go back in and see if we can get this thing to chain. Got all the way to there. So there must be another issue here. Yeah, there's a little split here. Usually where you see these little splits, that's where you're going to have issues. Now let's zoom all the way in as far as I can. Holy heck, that's really small. I'm going to grab that, analyze that entity, and once again, I'm going to move that to there. Check. Okay. Oh, I also missed a section here. So that also would help if I actually created a curve on that surface. All right. And let's hope that they're connected. We'll find out here. So hit check. So right there, I missed a section because it was just so small. I couldn't see it. And let's go ahead in and go to chain. Let's see if we can get... Okay, now we got a full chain there. All right, so we should be able to chain that now. So that's one of our guide curves. Now for the bottom guide curve, I could kind of do that the same way. The problem is I have these holes that are interrupting it. So how am I going to get that to cross that hole? I can draw a straight line, but that's really not right. Right? There's probably a curve to this or something like that. So to create a guide curve here, your best bet is to create a spline. And to create this spline, I'm going to click every midpoint and endpoint that I can click on. And you can see how it's following it. Now, it is going to deviate the last one. See how this deviates until I click up here. Then it's going to align itself. So we'll take a look at this once I'm actually done. Because you might be thinking, well, that doesn't look like it's going to line up, but it will. And we can even edit this spline, and we're going to have to do that with one of them here at some point. I think it's actually this one. No, it's not. It's not this one. It's a different one. This one actually, I believe, will turn out okay. So if there's any kind of distance I'm trying to pick up, so I'm not going to pick the midpoint between those two because that's not long enough to really affect anything. But basically, I'm trying to get almost every midpoint and every endpoint. If it's a super short section, you can probably skip one, but these longer sections, we definitely want to grab that. Okay. See how I selected? See how I selected there? That's a problem. So we're going to hit B, and that'll remove that point. That's the one we wanted. Somehow I was getting a weird selection there. Okay, and hit check. All right, so take a look at how that aligns. I mean, that thing is literally right over top of all my lines. That looks good. So now I have my two rails. So I'm going to come back in, and I'm going to go ahead and select those two rails. Upper. There we go. Check. Lower. Check. All right. And I'm going to go ahead and hit check. See what we get now. Well, that looks a heck of a lot better. And we're starting over here. It knows it's climb milling. So remember, I selected those rails the opposite direction. But it knows it needs to climb mill here. Okay, so we got a pretty good path there. Or at least by first appearance, we've got a pretty good path there. Now, let's go ahead and look and see what this looks like. Now, the best way to do this is to run this through backplot. I'm going to speed this up here. Okay. Let's see that tilting out. Okay. Ooh, now we got... So, see how that's tilting relative to the surface there? That's what we call fanning. Now, that's fanning quite a bit, and it's not terrible. Could be worse. So that's not the end of the world. And that ain't too bad. That ain't too bad at all. All right, let's hit check. Let's go in here and take a look. All right, let's extend this because we're starting right on the edge over here. So let's extend this, I don't know, let's say 0.1. 0.1. Actually, yeah, 0.1 should be okay. If it's not, we can always make it more. We always increase that a little bit. Okay. Everything here looks good. My surface quality. I'm always going to turn this cut tolerance down. For now, I'm going to leave it the way it is until I get everything the way I want it. Gouge checks, okay. For now, 6 inches. We're going to turn this down. We're going to turn this down to like 1 inch. And feed rate's fine. Multi-cuts. We are going to take 2 cuts on this. So we have slices, which are essentially depth cuts. And we have layers, which are essentially multi-passes. It kind of sounds weird because I kind of think of it the opposite way, but either way, we're going to do 2 of those, and we're going to make the distance 0.01. So we're going to do 10 thousandths to get that really close because we want to get a nice finish on this. And I'm going to go ahead and hit check. All right. So now we're starting off with a part. Notice it's dipping down here. Okay. That's problematic. So what we're going to do is we're going to come in here, and this can be controlled by drop and retract. We're going to say retract only for this. Now there may be times when you actually need to do drop and retract, but in this case it's basically staying at the same. There's nothing that needs to jump over and then come back down, so we're okay with retract only to fix this. Now you see it stays at that level. Now if we needed to use drop and retract because we had like something that needed to kind of come up over here, we would have to extend our surface to get that to work correctly. All right, so let's take a look and let's see what we get here. Let's go ahead and run this in full sim. Or not full sim, but verify. Let's just get rid of these. Okay. Oh, we forgot to finish that surface. Huh. See, that's why I use verify right there. Forgot to finish that surface. So let's do a contour. Let's grab this here, and we're going to go X, 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 X. Okay, right there we got a gap. Okay, so this is an issue that we run into here where this solid doesn't even have a line there, right? So this solid's not the best solid, that's for sure. Okay, so now we're not going to keep that. We're going to have to create a spline here. And I'm just going to do the same thing I did with the last one. I don't know why that's wants to. Oh, it's because it's the center. It's trying to pick the center. There. No. Got it. This is very, very difficult for some of these because if it's an arc, it's trying to pick the center of the arc, so you got to position this just right. Oh, I had it. There it is. To get that click. Now I could go into my settings here and I could turn off like arc center, and that would make this a little bit easier. But we're just going to kind of power through it here. Here we got an arc again. All right, so let's take a look at that. So that looks pretty good. It deviates a little bit here, but not a lot. And if we come down here, see it deviates a little bit there. All right, here we have some deviation. So that's some deviation right there. So we want to take care of that. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to go into our refit spline. Oop, sorry. We're going to go into our refit spline, arrow edit spline. And essentially what we're going to do is select a point on this spline. And I'm going to move this in. I'm going to move this in to line up with that. Now, let me escape that quick. Let's do that again. Do edit spline. And I want you to see how much I'm actually moving that. So what we're moving that is not even quite 8 thousandths to get to there. So, you know, not super significant, but certainly worth moving. Okay, so now it fits a lot better. We took care of a lot of that. Let's take a look here. We still have a little bit of deviation here. Let's look and see what this is. It snapped in the wrong place. So sometimes you have to zoom out to get it to snap to the right place. There we go. Okay, so now we're talking about 7/10. So probably not worth even fixing, right? Our tolerance should probably give us enough room to deal with that. Edit spline. Select here. And we're just going to see how much moving that in makes a difference. Okay, so we're talking about 3 thousandths there. Again, probably well within our tolerance there. So probably really not worth moving that anymore. So I'm going to go ahead and hit check. That spline should work just fine for what we're doing. All right, now I'm going to create my toolpath. And we're going to create a contour. I'm going to select that spline, check, tool. We're going to grab our 2-inch face mill. I'm going to edit this because our face mill is not exactly what you think it is. So we're going to say it's 2 inches full, 1 point, we'll say 4, or sorry, 1.94. We'll tell it we've got a corner radius of 0.03, and that should be just fine. We're going to hit finish. We're not going to worry about our holder just like we didn't before in this because it's not going to collide with anything in this case. All right, 2D. This needs to be 0. Off to the left. Lead in, lead out. Again, we're doing exactly that same thing. Linking parameters. Depth is at 0 incremental. I'm actually going to call absolute and tell it right there. Just in case that spline varies in the Z at all. And everything there looks good. And I'm going to hit check. Okay. So that starts off the material, finishes off the material. We're going to regenerate everything. And select everything, and we're going to take a look at this. Play. Actually. All right. Now we are ready to do our Swarf. So go ahead and play that. All right, see how that fans quite a bit there? Now, that might be okay. See how we have these high spots here a little bit. Not much. I mean, you're probably talking about a thousandth. There's a couple thousandths. But I don't like these little steps from where it's fanning. Also, the finish looks kind of like garbage, right? It looks like shit. So, and that probably is representative of what the finish would look like. It would look kind of like faceted like that. So right away, for those of you who are experienced, you're probably saying cut tolerance, cut tolerance, cut tolerance. Okay, so let's take a look at that, and let's see if we can get rid of that stuff. So first thing, the fanning, the way that it's fanning. The way that it controls the vector of the tool is in this advanced control. This is probably your best bet to control that. Automatic legacy, I have no idea what exactly that's based off of. Maybe in like the next video or two, I'll see if I can kind of figure out what that is. But what we're going to pick is, we're going to pick shortest distance. That's essentially going to minimize the distance between these two lines, and that's how it's going to orient the tool. So I'm going to pick shortest distance, and now I can control the amount of fanning that's allowed. So I'm saying it's the shortest distance, but you can deviate from the shortest distance up to 70 thousandths. I'm going to make that 50 thousandths. So that should control that fan, the amount that fans out. Cut tolerance. Let's make that 0.00001. So 1/10. Go ahead and hit check. Now it's going to take a little longer to regenerate because of that. But now let's go ahead and play this, and let's see what we get. So skip through. Skip that. And let's go ahead and play that. So notice it's not fanning as much. Didn't do that extreme fan. And notice I don't have that big lump there anymore. I got rid of those now because I got rid of that fanning. So that looks really good. Now, that being said, I can still see a little bit, and I'm not sure if you'll be able to see this in the video, but I can still see a little bit of like some faceted spots there. And I really want to minimize that. So if I come in and I look at my back plot and I go in here and I say, okay, I want to display the vectors, and let's go ahead and play that out. Oh no, I don't want to do all that. Just this. And let's go ahead and play. So you can see these vectors, and you see how got some really tight vectors here. This actually isn't bad. It actually isn't that bad. That's actually pretty darn good. So I may or may not even mess with that. But if you do get some faceting in here, the way that you can get rid of that is this maximum angle step. I'm telling it can't take an angle step of any more than 0.1 or maybe like 0.25. And I'm going to go ahead and hit check. Now that's going to take longer. And we're going to go ahead and play that. It's not as big of a deal for this one because we're kind of doing against a flat surface. But it's going to smooth this out a little bit. So it didn't make much of a difference with this one, but that looks pretty darn good. So I'm pretty happy with that. Let's just play that one more time. And we'll just go all the way up just to see everything happen. And if we come in, we kind of take an inspection on that, just kind of look at it. And you can see there's a little bit here where it looks like it's just a little bump. That's okay. It's probably 1/1000th of an inch. It's so insignificant. Here we have almost nothing. So that looks pretty darn good to me. Got a nice smooth surface there. So that's our first Swarf path. We're going to come back in the next video. We're going to finish this part up. And then we're going to go do some other Swarfs too in some other videos. So that's all for this one. Go ahead and take a look at video 2.1 or lesson 2.1. And that's going to pick up where we left off here.